Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nature Patch. My name is Robyn and today I'm going to do a little video about green manure. I'm going to be harvesting the green manure that I sowed I think a few months ago now. I've had mixed success with this green manure. It seemed to do better in some areas of this bed than others, but now is the perfect time to cut back your summer green manure. You want to do this before it starts to produce seeds, or else you're going to be left with a lot of green manure over the coming seasons, and I want to cut all of this back so I can start preparing it for the next round of crops that I'm going to be planting in here. So I'm standing in my food forest area, and this bed behind me here is where I planted some summer green manure, so I'll show you what it looks like now. So this whole bed here, starting up from around here, had green manure in it. You can see I've got a much thicker patch in here. I didn't really have too much success in the middle areas, but down here I actually cut it back a few days ago, so that area is all ready. But now I need to do this area. I'm going to be doing it without any special tools or machines, just a pair of secateurs, and then just laying it all on the top without digging it in. You'll have to excuse the dog noises out the back. The neighbours have very loud dogs that seem to bark every single afternoon. But I'm going to get on to doing this, and I'll show you what I'm doing. I'll probably put some music over the top, and then I'll have a chat about it after I've done. Just before I do it though, you can start to see that the sunflowers are starting to come out. And I'm also getting really immature mung beans. You don't really want them to get too much bigger than this, or else they'll start to produce their seeds and then just keep reseeding. So this all definitely needs to be cut back now. I'm going to sit down here. Hopefully you can hear me okay with the dogs barking in the background. If I were to have sown that area a little bit more dense, I would have had enough biomass to cover the area. I chose to, for this time here, first time remediating this really terrible soil with green manure, to actually focus on different sections which really needed the most attention and pile on a little bit more biomass, rather than seeding the whole area and it not being too thin, because a lot of them didn't actually grow because the soil was that bad, but actually sectioning it off into kind of 4 main sections and piling the biomass of 2 sections into 1 to focus on that area to remediate it. So I've basically piled a lot of biomass into the ends of these beds, because that's where I really want the soil to remediate the most. The reason I'm doing this is because I need so much organic matter in this area to remediate the soil, so that's why I've piled on quite a lot in one area. So you can see this big pile here was green manure from this whole area here, and I've piled it all down there. So as I mentioned in one of my other videos, green manure has so many benefits to the soil. For a start, you never want to have bare soil, because if we have bare soil, we're having higher rates of erosion and losing more actual soil mass. But also all of those microbes and fungi in that soil are basically going dormant and not being active, and therefore not creating that healthy soil ecosystem. So if you think about things in an ecosystem, they need protection, and that definitely goes for the soil as well. We want to provide that protection, and plants usually provide that protection for all of those ecosystem services and things going on in the soil down below. So green manure is a great way to kickstart that ecosystem again, which is definitely the aim back there in that green area now. All of that green stuff is going to decompose and feed all of those microbes, bacteria and fungi in the soil to create a bit more of an active environment, because right now it is pretty dead. So I should also mention that you don't just need to be sowing particular green manure crops or things that are stated as green manure to grow your own green manure. So there are so many different ways that you can use green manure and process it to return nutrients back into the soil. So one way is to dig it back in, but this whole area here is a no-dig garden, so I tend to let the soil ecosystem do its own thing because I have the space to do it. But I know in a lot of other small areas or high production agricultural sites, they need that really high turnover of nutrients going back into the soil, and so digging it in is what a lot of people do to actually get all the nutrients underneath the soil rather than letting it rot on the top and kind of slowly decompose in. My garden here that I have in this patch here is a no-dig garden, so I tend to not dig the soil except when I'm actually planting a plant in the ground. But I use this kind of as an experimental area to see what works and what doesn't, and leaving the soil ecosystem alone and just adding to the top and slowly letting those microbes and fungi kind of come up rather than messing with them and potentially killing some of those by bringing them up to the surface every time I dig the soil. Another awesome thing about green manure is that you don't actually need to sow specific or specified green manure crops to actually have green manure in your garden. So I class some of my green manure as some of the prunings that I get from some of my fruit crops and vegetables. So things like pumpkins are a great green manure crop. They cover the soil, and once they're done, or once you think that they're kind of going a little bit crazy, you can just snip them back here and there, and then they can just rot down on the soil but protect the soil and also return nutrients. I'm standing next to my big rosella tree and I have been pruning this back. I'll show you because it keeps on going over the pathways, and every time I prune this back, all I do is just cut it up into little pieces and drop it over here, and that also classes as green manure because I am pretty much doing the chop and drop and letting that green waste rot down on the soil and provide nutrients back into the ground. So you can also think of cuttings as green manure, and I also have larger green manure crops that are more permanent, like these pigeon pea here. So what I'm going to do now is add to the green manure pile that I just cut by cutting a lot of this back and cutting it down into little segments to add bulk organic matter onto that area. And this in time will completely bush up again, as I showed in one of my other videos. I recently cut it back around here where this little stalk is, and as soon as you cut it, this thing just grows ridiculously. So awesome permaculture plant. So all I have left to do is pretty much this area now to have my autumn green manure to be sown in here to add biomass to this area. This looks like a lot, but I can guarantee you in a few days it'll actually start to look like that and start to really rot down. Another thing I'd also suggest if you want accelerated decomposing of the material down here is actually to provide a little bit of moisture. So I've actually got some irrigation running underneath here that I turn on every few days to water this whole garden, and that'll provide water for all of the microbes underneath all of this awesome biomass to actually start to activate and start to break down and eat all of these materials on top. So pigeon pea is something that I like to use in the subtropics. It's definitely not a plant that can grow in a lot of other areas, but most areas do even have like native leguminous plants that provide nitrogen back into the soil. Pigeon pea is one of those. So right now where those plants are, where I cut them from, they're not only providing nitrogen through their leaves, which I can add on to the soil anywhere, but the roots are also providing nitrogen and nutrients back into the soil as well. So let me know if you have any awesome plants that you like to use for your green manure. I'm really happy with how this is going, and I'm sure that the soil is also going to be happy down below. It's definitely what I would call the lazy way to cut down your green manure. But again, I don't want to use all these fancy tools and everything. I want gardening to be as easy as it can and also be the most effective, which I think this way is pretty good. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what type of green manure you grow, or if you're starting to plant your summer or winter green manure wherever you are in the world. I'd love to know how you keep your soil healthy and if you've had success with green manure or not in the past. Thanks so much for watching. Please check me out on Instagram at The Nature Patch, where I pretty much post daily updates on what's happening in the garden, both the good and the bad, and lots of cat photos if you're interested in that. So go ahead on over there. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more like this. And until my next one, happy gardening, guys. Bye.